Okay, good day to everybody. We're learning the Maamar Lecha Dodi Lekraskala in the Sefer Maamar Melukotim here of the previous Rebbe. We're on page 150. Just to recap briefly what we learned yesterday, the last few times, that there's the Chosin and the Kala, and just like we greet Shabbos, we greet the Chosin and the Kala. All brachas come from Shabbos for the rest of the week and the previous week. He doesn't say that, but that's the implication. So too, through the greeting, the Chosin and the Kala, one receives the source of blessings. And then he enumerates the Kabbalah's Panim four points, 4 stages. There's the greeting of the Chosin. There is the going with the Chosin to the Kala. There is the Tzi'ifa, the veiling of the Kala. And then there's going together to the Chuppah. And then he said that under the chuppah is when you have the essential experience of having the essence of God revealed as you stand under the chuppah. Who stands under the chuppah? The Chosin and the Kala. The Chosin is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kala is B'nai Yisrael, the Yidden, the Jews. And so too, there's between the physical Chosin and the Kala. And then he says that before the chuppah, why is it necessary? This was Boaz's question yesterday. Thank you, Boaz, for bringing it to our attention. What's the metaphor and the lesson from the veiling of the Kala? So he said that's called the kiruv chitzoni of the mashpia, the external closeness of the mashpia to cause the recipient, the makabel, to want to feel comfortable and raise herself to the Chosin, and then the Chosin is able to give the Kala, the Kabbalah Pnimius, the Hashpah Pnimius, the inner essence of what he really wants to communicate. Now let's continue and see how he says this inside. To understand this better, our rabbis say in the Gemara Psochim, again, page 150, Ois Beis. Listen to this, Yoni. It's a beautiful Gemara. Rabbi, Mikamed, the Posech L'Hul Rabbanon. Rabbi, before he opened to teach, before he began teaching the rabbis, Oma Milsa de B'dichosa. He said a riddle. Milsa de B'dichosa means a riddle, a joke. Uvadchu, next page 151. Uvadchu Rabbanon. And the rabbis laughed. And the end result was that they sat with awe, with fear. They sat there listening and really respecting with reverence the rabbi, the teacher, Rabbi. And then he began teaching the halacha, the sugya of the Gemara that he was teaching. What happened over here? What happened is very simple, guys. The rabbi has a class of students. He comes in, they all know he's this humongous scholar, right? And they're, students. So there's a gap between them, and there's a gap that's really seemingly irreversible. So it takes the rabbi, the teacher, to initiate a particular method to break. Hi, the blazer. To break. Good morning. To break. It takes the teacher, Rabbi, to break the fear. So what does he do? He basically does what many speakers do today. Before they begin with the real content, they make a joke. They say a riddle. They say something that's easy going, that everyone gets more into the comfort zone. That's what the Gemara says in Psochim, Rabbi did with his Talmidim. And once he saw they were all comfortable and they were relaxed, as we say in English, they were chilled out, then Upasach B'Shmaita, he was able to really give them the meat and potatoes. So before you get meat and potatoes, you have to have an appetizer. That's the idea here. Let's continue. it takes the mashpia, it takes the teacher to initiate the process with and for his rabbis, meaning his students. V'hainu lases es hamakabel. It's up to the teacher, the mashpia, to make the recipient ro'i lekabel dvar hashpah, that he be suitable to receive the information. How does he do that? By opening his vessels and his talents. In other words, every student, every makabel has chushim and kalim, right? The question is, how do you open them? How do you find them? So the Rebbe says it takes a teacher, the mashpia, to figure out a way to create that opening in the student. Now you guys see how important it is to have a good teacher. I mean, to say, in school, you can have, there's great teachers, but if they don't know how to access and get the students to be interested enough to want to, remember, we're not even talking now about laser to actuality to do it. The words in the Maamar, look at the words on the second line of 151. V'hainu lasos es hamakabel ra'ui. What does the word Hillel ra'u mean? Suitable. Ready. So in other words, not that we're doing it now, it's not being done yet. But I should be ready to do it if the chance presents itself. That's what ra'u means. And it continues, v'tzaruch l'ftayach b'shmaitza sheyeh dvar hashpah lefi erech hamakabel. Then he says, once you open up that comfort level for the students, you need to then open a halacha. Shmaitza means a sugya, halacha of meat and potatoes, right? Sheyeh davar hashpah lefi tzorech lefi erech hamakabel. You can't overwhelm Yoni. If you overwhelm the student with some, flutin' tootin', trigonometry equations, and they basically know basic mathematics, you're talking to a wall. You're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You want to show how great you are? Go to a wall and talk to the wall. No. So what he's saying is, even after you open up the talents of each student in the room, and then you start teaching them, hoping that they'll use their talents to understand what you're teaching them or giving them. If you give them a hashpah that's way over their head, they ain't getting anything. You're wasting your time. That's what he says. Let's continue. And he says, V'lezeis, therefore, before the Rabbah, the teacher, opened the class with the information, the shmaitza, the halacha, the sugya, to make them a vessel for receiving the halacha. What did he do first? He said a riddle. He said a joke. He cracked a joke. He made them comfortable. That's why Pinchas, our wonderful Pinchas, is always making nice jokes. He wants us to feel comfortable to learn by Reb Shlomo and myself. He's the one that provides for us the milsa de bdichasa. Milsa de bdichasa, who sichas. What? I was hoping I'd get a comment out of him. Anyway, milsa de bdichasa, he sichas chulin. Now the Rebbe says here, the riddle is not a riddle, a Torah riddle. You know how you have these Torah riddles. The Menilsa B'dichasa, the riddle is Sichas Chulin. Sichas Chulin means mundane conversation. It's not Sichas Kodesh. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's Sichas are called the Sichas Kodesh, the holy Sichos, the holy talks. It's Sichas Chulin. It's conversation of which its content is Chulin, right? From the word Chol, mundane, secular. And although this sichas chulin shel talmidei chachamim tzrichim limud, now this is a rhetorical remark. The Gemara says in Sukkah that the conversation, the sichas chulin of the ordinary mundane talmidei chachamim scholars tzrichim limud. We need to study. When you hear a Talmud Chacham speak what sounds to you like mundane conversation, comes the Gemara and Sukkah and says, you have to explore it and study it because there's brilliance of Torah there. So the Rebbe's question is, the previous Rebbe's question is, if that's the case, why do you tell me that the way to open up the talents of the students so they feel comfortable is with sichas chulin, when the Gemara says in Sukkah that sichas chulin itself has a lot of depth? That's his question, and his retort. His immediate retort is, and it was still lefi sheyesh ben chochma rabba. This is still part of the rhetorical question. Lefi sheyesh ben chochma rabba, because sichas chulin there is much wisdom to it. Uschalim amukim, and deep intellectual thoughts. And here comes the retort. Umikol makam, Hillel, is the retort to the words of 2 lines above. Ve'im hayos. Ve'im hayos implies rhetorical question. Umikol makam is nevertheless is the retort to the rhetorical question. Umikol makam, and nevertheless. Who p'chinas chitzoini is. Yes, sichas chulin, the Gemara is right, of course. Sichas chulin we need to explore, no question about it. However, compared to what's going on, compared to the thing, it's only chitzoini. It's only external. You can't compare a halacha, a sugya, of teichen, of content, to sichas chulin. In other words, he's saying that, okay. In other words, he's saying like this. The Gemara is right in saying that sichas chulin tzrichim limud. But the Gemara doesn't mean to say that sichas chulin is equivalent to what? To the content. It's not. So that's why he says, mikol mokim, nevertheless, sichas chulin, it's still p'chinas chitzonius. It's still external in comparison to the content. And although the greater one is, haregam hasichas chulin shaloi heim b'madrega gavoa yoiser, then the person's conversation, the greater one is a Talmud Chacham, right? Then that person's sichas chulin, mundane conversation, is greater. You could learn many wondrous things from listening to a Talmud Chacham have mundane conversation. And I want to just for a second tell you, this is not something that's just to be taken lightly. Sometimes, if you have a chance and you're in a shul, or you're at a Shabbaton, or you're on a vacation, and you have 2 Talmidei Chachamim, and they're sitting and speaking what seems to be ordinary conversation, if you're able to eavesdrop on them and listen to the conversation, because this is what we're learning here, because since they're both Talmidei Chachamim, their sichas chulin is not like the sichas chulin of the ordinary person. Their mundane conversation is much more sophisticated, elevated spiritually, even though compared to really learning Gemara and all that, it's sichas chulin. That's what he says here. One can learn many wondrous things from listening to the mundane conversation of Talmidei Chachamim. Ve'im ki zehu rak neivlis chachma, neivlis bilvad. It's only neivlis. Neivlis means it's like not the fruit itself. It's something that falls off the fruit. You know, a branch, a twig. It's not the very thing itself. Umikol makoim hein gufi chachma. The Rebbe says, but never forget that the Sichos Chulin of Talmidei Chachamim, it's Novlos Chachma, but it's still Chachma of Torah. It's not to be, in other words, not Chas v'Shalom to say that the conversation of Talmidei Chachamim is secular and mundane in its very coarse form, or even in its regular form. No. The Gemara says, we say, Mikol Mokim, Hein Gufei Chachma. That itself is Chachma. And as the Gemara, the Chachamim say, the rabbis say in Ksubis, L'shem Chachamim Bracha. The terminology of Chachamim is blessing. L'shem Chachamim Moshe. The words of the Chachamim is wealth. L'shem Chachamim Marpe. The words of Chachamim is healing. V'hu Shimusha Shel Torah. And this is called the apprenticeship of Torah. And you all know the famous saying that this Yid said he learned more from the way the Maggid tied his shoes. I forget which Rebbe said this. He was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich, whose yahrzeit is Yutes Kislev next week on Tuesday, a week from today. So he said, I learned more from the way my Rebbe ties his shoes than from the teachings. How do you support that? And by the way, you probably know, this has been a kind of a contested issue over the years between the Hasidic world and the Litvak world. You know, what credence do you give to Shimusha Shel Torah? In other words, do you spend your time learning, and just stop with this, learning from a Rebbe how he eats and how he sleeps and how he walks, or from a Talmud Chacham, for that matter. For example, in Brisk, right? The Brisker are very, very against this type of activity of paying attention to the Rav's personal behavior and his conversation. They don't, of course, they know the Gemara and Sukkah, but they teach the Gemara and Sukkah that refers to mundane conversation within the realm of Torah. I'll give you an example. Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson was a Jew, who learned in Lubavitch in the 1900s, and then he came to America in 1926, and he was someone who helped establish Chabad in America. So I read in his memoirs, that he said he was traveling somewhere. This was in 1938. I think actually it was in Poland. He came here to see the Rebbe, and he was very tired. So he was at a train station waiting for a train or something, or on the train. And he says he took out a certain sefer and he read it. And he said because he was too tired to deeply study a sugya. So you see, there's a difference between studying a piece of Gemara Be'iyun or looking into a Rashi with great depth and toiling and hurrying, schwitzing, versus just, reading something. But that's all of Torah. That's all in the realm of Torah. So that's what we're saying over here. That's in the realm of learning Torah. So that's how the Brisker look at this Gemara. But many others look at the Gemara in a very simple way. Shimusha Shel Torah means being meshamish, serving, aiding Torah and a Talmud Chacham. So whether this has been overdone, there is a criticism out there that it's been really overdone. But forget about the practical aspect now, where people go off, on a tangent, and they decide they have to spend so much time looking at the Rebbe's shoes. I want to tell you guys, I remember several times when the Rebbe went out and he I don't shouted, but he got upset. He said, "What are you standing outside here and waiting for me to come home?" The Rebbe would go to the Ohel, normally Erev Rosh Chodesh, and on the 15th of the month, every month. And he would come back. The Rebbe would leave early afternoon, and he would come back when you could daven Ma'ariv already, unless you were a Satmar or a Skver, and you daven much later. And the Rebbe, because he was davening for Yidden, and there was traffic and everything else, he couldn't get back to 770 on time. Actually, in the earlier days, he did, in the 1950s and 60s. But later, the workload, the amount of people that wrote to him that he should daven for them to Hashem at the Ohel became so much that he had so much reading of the petition notes and the tzetlach and the letters that he couldn't make it back on time earlier. So anyway, sometimes... So the Bochurim stood outside 770 and waiting and looking. Is the car coming from Easter Parkway? And I remember a few times the Rebbe saw them. He said, "Stop wasting your time. Go inside and learn it." Like, what are you doing? I'll come to Mincha and we'll daven Mincha. He didn't say those words, but so what I'm saying is that this idea of Shimush Shel Torah can be abused as well. But at the same time, there's something to being Mishamish a Talmud Chacham. To be Mishamish a Talmud Chacham, to do apprenticeship, is the practicality of all learning. You could learn and philosophize, and until you do the Shimush, the actual attendance and work and apprenticeship, you're not doing it. So that's why Shimush Shel Torah, and also, a real Rav, a real posek, needs to have shimush. What does that mean? So for those that want to be real Rabbanim, they hang around other Rabbanim older than them, and they go with them to the shlachtos, to the slaughterhouse, and they hear the shilas of kashrus, and they hear the shilas of nida. You take shimush. I did a little shimush before I went out to California, Shlichus, in '84. I went to a few Rabbanim and took shimush in a few areas, so that I see and hear and see how they apply the Torah, the halacha, to the practical situation. But I did a little about it. But a Rav who's full-time, a Rav, paskin shilas, really, they need that. And without that, it's all very nice from a book, from a sefer, from a base medrash. But they're missing the Shimush Shel Torah. So this is what we're talking about here. Let's continue back in the Maamar. So he says, V'Amar Azal, he quotes the Gemara in Brachas, powerful Gemara. Gedoyle Shimush Shel Torah Yosem Milimuda. Greater is serving the Torah, the apprenticeship, more... Yes.
The Gemara says, I don't remember where it is exactly, but one of the Talmidim went under the bed doing the tashmish, and he said, "What are you doing there?" He says, "Rebbe, it's too tired
Yeah. I know about the Gemara, but I didn't want to use that example. But I know about the Gemara.
Well, listen, you gotta say
I think today, Laser, we could. There's so many other areas before we get to snooping in on our Rebbe's private bedroom. And let us continue. Anyway. So the Gemara says in Brachas, Gedoyle Shimusha Shel Torah Yosem Milimuda. Greater is the Shimush of Torah, more so than the actual learning. You hear that? It's greater to be mishamish, be a shamish, be an aid for Torah, more than the learning of Torah. Shenema, and the Gemara brings in Brachos a proof to that statement from here. It says, Shenema poi, it says over here, in Malachim, in Kings 2, chapter 3, verse 11, it says like this. Elisha ben Shaphat asher yotzak mayim al-yedei Eliyahu. Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who poured water on the hands of Eliyahu. It doesn't say lomad loy nemar. It doesn't say that he learned with him. Eliyotzak, he poured water. Melamed. This teaches us shegdoilo shimusha Yoser milimuda, that greater is shimush, is assisting more than learning. That's the proof from the Gemara. So now he continues, going back to the next part that he began with in this chapter. V'hinei lipsoif, after Rabbi opened up his teaching his students with a riddle, Yosef be'emsa, the students sat with awe, uposach b'shmaitza, and then he began teaching them the content, the sugya, the halacha that he was teaching them. The Rebbe says, Moshe, listen to the Rebbe takes a Gemara. The Gemara literally means what, Yoni? They sat with fear, And as only a Chabad Rebbe could do, the Rebbe says, it doesn't mean they were sitting there with trepidation, shaking. It doesn't only mean that. It means that they were permeated with Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shamayim. That's what Rabbi accomplished by getting them to feel comfortable and to allow their senses to open up. It reminds me of, another, not story, but something that there were tzaddikim. On their desk was money. Why was there money on the desk? Usually, and people would come in, they would see the money on the desk. In a way, it's like not nice, People would give a tzaddik, a rebbe, they would give him a petition note, a letter, ask them to pray to Hashem for them and their needs, and they would give money. They would give, that's always been the tradition, if they're able to. And by the way, it's not just, there's holy sources for this idea of giving. It's called a pidyon. What does a pidyon mean? A redemption. My father-in-law was a chassid, a Lubavitcher. He says, you want the Rebbe to go and daven for you and ask Hashem. You believe that the Rebbe has a koyach that, more than yours, that you daven and he's, he goes straight up there. What are you giving him? He's like, what are you giving him? What do you mean giving him? What are you giving? You have to give tzedakah. That's what he said. And you should know, in Chabad there were people who they wouldn't give a check. They would get cash from the bank, and they would put the cash and send the cash in, and they were hopeful that the Rebbe accepted their cash. Anyway, it's just a whole thing of money. It's something that I don't know if you've heard about or read or what. No, it's not a joke. It's there's holiness to it if it's done right and authentic and the person's authentic. So, but then there were Rebbes who had money on their desk. So when you came in to ask for a bracha, you saw it. Why? And the explanation, it's like it doesn't look nice. The answer is they needed the money in a way to cause them harchavas hadas. Harchavas hadas means broadening of the mind. In other words, they feel they don't have to worry how they're going to support their wife and children and community. The money was kind of an opener, like I said before, an appetizer. So we're saying over here that it reminds me. I went to see a Makubal once with a group of people in Dimona. I don't know if I ever told you, but I had the experience to meet the woman that was possessed with a dibuk. I went to interview her about the 15 or so years ago, more in Eretz Yisrael, and she at the time lived in Beersheba. But the actual, the dibuk and everything else happened in Dimona. On the way to Dimona, I stopped off at the Baba Sali's great nephew called Machaluf Lasri. I don't know if anyone was around at the time. You're talking about 15, 20 years ago. He lived out in, it'll come to me, I forget. Or maybe he lived in Dimona. He lived in Dimona, I think. So I went to see him because the people told me, or Yerushalmi told me to go, so I took him along. And we all gave him some money. I mean, what he did and what he said, I recorded and put out a video. You can actually see the way a Makubal does Kabbalah on us. It's very interesting. So I documented it and I have it out in a video. So we gave him some money, and all of a sudden he spoke only Arabic. He starts. I didn't understand the word, and the interpreter says, he's like saying it's not enough money. We gave him, but I was very surprised. Like, here you are, you're kind of you are a makubal, and you're authentic. That's what they tell me, and I'm not saying he was using it, to buy a more comfortable couch. The Yerushalmi interpreter said, he needed it for his moistness. But I still was a little taken back, but, I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm just telling you what happened. So why am I saying this? Because we're talking about the milsa, the b'dichasa, that causes yiras Hashem. The proof is in the pudding. You hear this? How do you know if your joke and your opening and your riddle is kosher and acceptable and has done its job? Only if you create in the recipients and the students who sit there now and listen to the lecture, Yiras Hashem. That's the proof. And if if not, that means you use the wrong joke, the wrong riddle, the wrong opener. And I think it's a great lesson for public speakers too. Sometimes the public speaker will throw out a joke or a riddle or something, and what follows is just they're bored and not interested, and they walk away not moved. And in this case, they walk away without Yiras Shamayim. So the Iker is the Yiras Shamayim. Anyway, we'll continue tomorrow, everyone. Sei gesund from Moscow. What?
I'm going to tomorrow. I'll be back like in a week from Thursday.
Where are you going, to Moscow?
He's going to Moscow. Where are you back in New York?
No, I'm Poland. I'm going to Moscow to Lazar's wedding for a week.
Enjoy. So I'll be in New York for you.
Where are you going to be? You going to be in New York?
Yeah.
Okay. Have a safe trip, everybody, and we'll see you when you get back. Take care.